When I finally bought my dream home in Maple Grove Estates, it felt like stepping into a slice of suburban perfection. I'm Jamie, a down-to-earth guy who's always cherished a bit of independence and personal style. After years of renting cramped spaces in the city, I was thrilled to finally settle down in a neighborhood where every house looked picture-perfect and every lawn was a testament to pride of ownership. Maple Grove Estates, however, wasn't just any neighborhood. It was a community governed by one of the strictest HOAs around. Every detail, from the color of your mailbox to the height of your hedges, had to be just right. And while that meticulous order lent the neighborhood a certain charm, it also meant that a single misstep could spark a full-blown showdown with the board's enforcer. Little did I know, my first brush with the HOA was about to set off a chain of events I'd never expected. Within my first week in Maple Grove Estates, I quickly learned who held court when it came to neighborhood rules: HOA Karen. I first encountered her on a brisk Tuesday morning as I was arranging some welcome plants by my front door. There she was, striding down the sidewalk with a determined gait, her clipboard clutched like a shield. Dressed in a sharply pressed blouse and a string of pearls that somehow added to her austere aura, Karen didn't waste a second in making her presence known. "Good morning," she greeted, her tone too crisp for casual small talk. "I'm Karen, your HOA liaison. I'll be keeping an eye on things to ensure everyone's compliance with our community standards." Her eyes swept over my modest setup, and I couldn't help but feel a chill as she inspected every detail as if it were a potential infraction waiting to happen. Neighbors later confided in me that Karen had a reputation for turning even the slightest deviation into a full-blown violation. It wasn't uncommon to hear stories of residents getting a swift reminder, or something harsher, if their door colors weren't precisely within the approved palette, or if a hedge dared to grow a millimeter too wild. I offered a tentative smile, trying to mask my unease, but Karen's unwavering gaze made it clear she wasn't in the habit of indulging pleasantries. With each step she took, it was as if she was silently patrolling the very boundaries of Maple Grove Estates, ensuring that every lawn, fence, and flower bed adhered to an unspoken and uncompromising code of perfection. Little did I know, that very day, Karen's meticulous watchfulness would soon zero in on a project I was secretly excited about. But for now, her introduction was a stark reminder that in this neighborhood, perfection wasn't just expected, it was enforced. After settling into the neighborhood's rigid routine, I decided it was time to add a little personality to my property, a touch of individuality that didn't just blend in with the cookie-cutter perfection around me. I had always dreamed of a fence that wasn't just a boundary, but a statement. One weekend, while sketching ideas on a notepad over coffee, I envisioned a fence that combined modern lines with rustic charm, crafted from reclaimed wood, with elegant iron accents that balanced form and function. This fence wasn't merely about privacy or keeping unwanted eyes at bay. It symbolized my desire to break free from the mundane constraints imposed by the HOA. In my eyes, it was a celebration of personal style and a nod to a life lived on one's own terms. Every board I planned to install carried the promise of security, a gentle rebellion against a neighborhood where conformity was prized above all else. Little did I know, as I began planning my project and gathering materials, that this very fence would soon become the center of a showdown, a challenge that would test not only the limits of the HOA's authority, but also my own resolve. And of course, it would catch the unyielding gaze of HOA Karen sooner than I'd ever imagined. Not long after I'd put up the first few panels of my dream fence, I noticed a change in the air, an unmistakable tension that hinted trouble was on its way. One crisp morning, as I was adjusting a board near the corner of my property, I heard a firm knock on my door. Opening it, I was greeted by none other than Karen, clipboard clutched tightly in her hand, an expression that left no room for negotiation. "Good morning, Jamie," she said, her tone already edged with disapproval. "I'm afraid we need to talk about that fence of yours." I could tell from her gaze that she wasn't referring to a polite suggestion. "What's the problem?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. Karen didn't waste any time. "Your fence is a clear violation of Maple Grove Estates design guidelines. It doesn't match the approved aesthetic. Its height, materials, even the color, are all out of line with community standards. I want to have to insist that you tear it down immediately." Her words hit me like a cold splash of water. I'd spent months researching and crafting a design that balanced modern style with a nod to rustic charm. To have it dismissed as a mere infraction felt like a personal attack on my creativity and independence. "Come on, Karen," I protested. I followed all the requirements outlined in the guidelines as I understood them. This fence isn't just a boundary. It's a piece of art that adds character and even increases security for my home. But Karen's expression was unyielding. The board has received several complaints, she insisted, tapping her clipboard for emphasis. They say it's an eyesore and a disruption to the uniform look of the neighborhood. Until you remove it, I'm compelled to file a formal violation notice. Standing there, I couldn't help but feel a mix of frustration and disbelief. This wasn't just about a fence, it was a battle over the right to express a little individuality in a place that prized sameness above all. Little did I know, this conflict was about to take an even more unexpected turn, one that would append Karen's iron grip on the community's rules. That evening, I sank into my favorite armchair with a mug of lukewarm coffee, the weight of Karen's ultimatum pressing down on me. I couldn't wrap my head around it. I'd spent weeks meticulously planning every detail, and now she was demanding I undo all that work. I dug out the Maple Grove Estate's HOA guidelines, determined to find any clause that could justify Karen's harsh stance. As I pored over the fine print, my frustration mounted. The language was so vague, it felt like Karen was cherry-picking parts of the rulebook to suit her own agenda. There was nothing explicitly banning my reclaimed wood fence or its modern flair. Every now and then, I'd pause and mutter to myself, this has to be a mistake. I followed the guidelines to the letter. I even reached out to a couple of neighbors, those who'd whispered similar grievances in hushed tones, and discovered that I wasn't the only one feeling stifled by Karen's overzealous enforcement. With each page I turned, the more I questioned whether the rules were meant to be interpreted strictly or if there was some wiggle room for a bit of personal expression. I felt like I was caught in a bureaucratic labyrinth, where every answer led to more questions. And yet, a stubborn resolve was building inside me. I wasn't about to let an outdated, one-size-fits-all rule dampen my spirit. It was in this mix of disbelief, irritation, and determination that I stumbled upon something that would soon change the entire game. As I cross-referenced local ordinances with the HOA rules, one name kept popping up, a reminder of a resource I'd taken for granted, my Uncle Leo, the town inspector. Little did I know, his role was about to flip the script on Karen's demands in a way I never expected. I couldn't help but smile as I picked up the phone and dialed Uncle Leo's number, my secret weapon in this bureaucratic battle. "Hey, Uncle Leo," I said as soon as he answered, "I need your expert opinion on something. It's about my new fence, and Karen from the HOA is insisting it's a violation." His deep, reassuring voice filled the line. "Jamie, I've seen a lot in my years as a town inspector. Bring me over this afternoon, and I'll take a look." Later that day, Uncle Leo arrived with his trusty toolkit and a measured gaze that had saved many a homeowner from endless red tape. He walked alongside me to the fence, nodding as he examined every detail, from the reclaimed wood panels to the modern iron accents. After a thorough inspection, he turned to me with a smile. "Jamie, this fence is not only beautiful, it's 100% up to code. Everything here meets local regulations, and there's no reason for it to be considered a violation. Karen's complaints are baseless." Hearing that was like a shot of adrenaline straight to my heart. Uncle Leo's confirmation wasn't just professional validation, it was personal vindication. I now had a solid backing from someone who knew the rules inside and out, and it was time to turn the tables on Karen. Armed with Uncle Leo's expert report and a newfound confidence, I knew I was ready for the next step. Karen's demand to tear down my fence was about to get a serious reality check, and I was more than ready to stand my ground. With Uncle Leo's stamp of approval in hand, I knew it was time to confront the situation head-on. I arranged a meeting with the HOA board, inviting Karen along for what I hoped would be a calm discussion. As we gathered in the community room, I laid out Uncle Leo's detailed report and even shared photos of my fence, pointing out every detail that proved it met every local regulation. Karen tried to argue her case, citing vague, outdated rules and insisting that my fence was an eyesore. But as the board members reviewed the evidence, it became clear that her claims held no water. One by one, they acknowledged that the fence was not only compliant but also added a charming touch to the neighborhood. The turning point came when the board voted unanimously to retract Karen's demand. In that moment, I realized that standing up for what I believed in and having solid backing from someone like Uncle Leo had shifted the entire dynamic in Maple Grove Estates. In the weeks that followed, the neighborhood's atmosphere lightened. My fence became a symbol of a small, yet significant victory, a sign that personal expression and community standards could coexist. Even Karen's demeanor softened a bit. I'd catch her glancing over my fence with a hint of resignation, and though she never said it outright, I suspected she was rethinking her rigid approach. Life went on, a little freer and more vibrant. I enjoyed my fence as a daily reminder that sometimes a bit of courage and a supportive uncle can make all the difference. And who knows? Maybe one day, Karen and I might even share a cup of coffee and a laugh about the whole ordeal. For now, Maple Grove Estates had become not just a neighborhood, but community where individuality was allowed to shine through.